Oh, you had dinner.
I did.
That's good.
Yeah.
I can get behind that.
We're really good at small talk at the short game.
Yeah, this is some Crackerjack radio here.
Hi guys, welcome to The Short Game, a show where we talk about short games, the kind of game that you could complete in an evening or a weekend. Except this time, we're talking about games that you could never complete, no matter how long you played them, because they are literally endless.
It's in the name.
It's right in there. This time, we're going to be talking about a game that hopefully all of you will have a chance to play, because it is now only $2. So let me introduce all three of my co-hosts, who each of them have spent $2 of their hard-earned dollars on this game and played it. Raygan, how's it going?
Pretty good. I am $2 the poorer, but I'm pleased to say that I have the highest score of any of you guys.
$2 the poorer and the highest score.
You wasted no time. Literally the first chance you got to talk.
Yep.
You told us about your high score.
I knew it.
Couldn't wait.
All right, in order of Alto score, our podcasters this week are Raygan Kelly.
Oh, wait, hang on. I want to say the score because this is a good bit.
Oh, yeah, guys, this is going to be a great bit.
Yeah, that's a
where we
bit.
each brag.
It's a great bit where Ray gets to say how high score is.
Raygan loves this bit. So in order of Game Center high score on this week's episode, we begin with Raygan Kelly, 63,199 points. Raygan Kelly, come on down.
I swear I'm not a sore winner. I'm just very excited with my score of 63,199 points.
How annoyed are you by that 9-9?
Oh, it's the worst. Oh my god. But you know, I don't know. I like all those big digits. Something about that feels nice and fat.
Oh my god.
Next down the row.
Really? Are we doing phrasing? Can we say phrasing?
Next podcaster is...
Oh, it would be Nate, I believe.
Yeah.
Fancy podcaster Nate Heiniger.
Thank you. I have apparently a paltry 45,243.
Booyah!
That is so close to mine.
It really is.
Lauren Nash, welcome back to the short game. What is your high score?
My high score is 44,783.
Well, you shouldn't have gone for that double backflip.
I love the backflips. That's why I die all the time.
And
if it makes you feel better, my 45,000 stopped on a failed attempt at my first ever triple backflip. I have no idea why I decided to do a triple backflip just in the middle of it. I was like, I'm on top of the world. I'm out chasing two elders. This game is mine. Triple backflip.
You can do it.
I barely made it 2 1/4. It was so stupid.
That's
But how about we introduce our last person, who's not Julia Pike as he appears on my Game Center, but Shane Kelly. What is your high score?
the paltry 38,609. So I bow down to all three of my short game comrades as the masters of the slope.
Now, we've been talking about this game all this time and haven't yet actually mentioned the name.
Ski Free. Classic pack-in for the Windows PC. Ski Free includes high-definition graphics and accurate controls using the left and right arrow keys.
And although it is a spiritual predecessor of this game,
Abominable Snowman.
yes, Alto's adventure is snowboarding. It's very different. And you might have heard it a lot because people have said it's Monument Valley quality graphics. It brings a lot of that art direction style, charm to an Endless Runner, which is what this episode is about, since we've already failed to mention both the title of the game we're reviewing and the topic of the day. Good job, everybody.
Top-notch podcasting.
Yes, the topic of this episode was bragging. So now that we've gotten the bragging out of the way, is there anything else we want to talk about?
Thanks for listening to the short game. We'll see you next week.
Well, listeners, you thought we'd gotten the bragging out of the way. Well, this is your editor, Raygan. After the recording, I just wanted to add an update at this point to let you all know that my new high score is actually 130,881 points. Yes, that's right, 130,881. I'm still in the lead. Thank you.
Well, today we're talking about endless runners. So, first of all, we want to define the genre. Basically, you run, fly, fall, move in a single direction until you die.
Yeah.
So this rules out actually a lot of games that are not endless or not runners.
Yeah, and we can specifically talk about some of those games in a second, but honestly, like, we don't really have to define this that much, do we? I mean, everyone who has a smartphone, which is everybody listening to this show, as far as I can imagine, you've played some of these games. I mean, this is one of the defining genres on smartphones as a gaming platform over the last 3 or 4, however, 5 years.
Can you think of a more popular, I guess maybe word games, just in general?
Match 3 puzzle games like Candy Crush maybe beat this out for like overall popularity.
I guess that's true.
It didn't really quite spawn a genre, but the Angry Birds physics, score attack level type things.
Angry Birds is a genre all its own.
Yeah, it really is. They're good. We could do a season of game. Not that they would be worth listening to, but we could do a whole season about the Angry Birds games.
To kind of pin this down specifically, I think of it as a offshoot of the platform game genre, except that it's super simplified because I think it boils down to the fact that it's hard to do precise controls on a touchscreen. And when you strip away everything else, well, what is the touchscreen? It's one big button. And if you can create a game that effectively controls an already familiar style of gameplay, the platformer, with a single button, you've created something that plays like a breeze on a mobile device or a touchscreen. You can play with one hand, and you can pack in a lot of action if you do it right. I think it deserves to be a standout genre on mobile because it's a perfect fit for the mobile device.
That's a really good point.
It's not clunky at all. It's one of the least clunky games you can play on a mobile device. In a genre or in a device full of clunky games, these games are not that.
It's a game you can play literally anywhere. The most complicated ones on the list might have some up, down, left, right swiping, but generally everything is one button or one-handed games. Oddly enough, they're not necessarily games I would suggest playing on public transportation because you're more likely to bump into somebody and die. But at most, you're playing for 2-3 minutes. So it's really easy to just keep playing over and over and over.
Maybe you're playing for 2 or 3 minutes.
That's how you end up with a score like 44-5 or whatever you're.
Excuse me.
Look at this guy. Look at this guy over here. So many llamas.
Excuse me. I will read it for you again. It was 63,199.
It's a game you easily lose track of time in.
I think you're right, but it's an interesting game. Like, it's not uncommon where, like, the better you are, the longer your game is. Like, that's a real old school, like, arcadey thing. But this is a real modern adaptation of that. And it is weird that, like, when you start out playing, especially, like, with Alto, the ones that can go for a really long time, your first games might only be a minute. But I don't know. My high score game, it might not have been as long as it felt, but I was playing for several minutes. Mm-hmm. And a trip on the bus, like, I would, if I was in a good run, I would just miss my stop. I'm just like, all right, I'm getting off.
I actually have stopped playing a stop early so I don't start and miss my spot.
Smart.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the history of this genre. And I mean, we've got a nice little outline here. Thanks, Laura, for putting so much effort into it because it's actually looks great. I'll be putting a lot of info into the show notes. But basically, I think this can all be drawn back to a single game, also a mobile game, and that's Cannibalt in 2009. Now, there's some historical sort of antecedents and inspirations for Cannibalt, but I think this whole genre boils down to, when I first started seeing games like this, mostly people called them Cannibal clones before we all settled on calling them endless runners. Do you guys remember when Cannibal came out?
I do. It was I had an iPod Touch at the time. So I was really using that as a gaming platform. And everyone was talking about the graphics and style, but mostly the talk was about the mechanic. He eventually invented the genre, one-touch gameplay, a very cool music track that I didn't bring up in the game music, but almost did.
Yeah, totally great music.
I don't play it a lot. Yeah, I don't play it a lot anymore, but it definitely was revolutionary.
I still go back to it every now and then now. It's actually one of the first really, really good iOS games. I think it came out in 2009, although actually it debuted on the web. Like there's a web version of it that's still available, and because the game's so simple, I mean, it plays just as well on the web as it does on a touchscreen or on like an iPhone. But you should definitely get the iPhone version of this game, because I guarantee you, while you may not play this every day, but you'll go back to it again and again. I still download it onto my phone. Pretty much every time I get a new device, I'll play it a few times on the new screen, and they keep it up to date. It still looks great on like nice modern devices, and really great music. To give you a sense of Cannibal, just visually, it's a black and white and sort of grayscale graphics. A tiny little pixelated man who looks like he's wearing a little business suit jumps out the window of a high building and begins running along some rooftops. And your job is to tap the screen and make sure that he jumps from rooftop to rooftop, so that he doesn't fall into the gaps between the buildings. Meanwhile, it seems like something really dramatic and kind of unspecified is going on in the city. Sometimes the buildings are giant mechanical things. Sometimes giant mechanical things will crash through the buildings, destroying them while you're still standing on them. You have to jump through windows and so on. I'm really not very good at this game. My high score wouldn't be anything impressive, but I still go back to it and play it every now and then, because I think it's just the perfect first example of this style of gameplay, and it really holds up.
To put it in time context, this was the same year that Spider: The Secret of Bryce Manor came out, and that's the one that won all the awards that year. I think at the time, people didn't know what was going to be influential in the App Store. It would be interesting to know if, 2020, what people would have given it to. Spider is definitely a wonderful game, but this one definitely had a bigger influence on how the App Store would move forward.
That's a good point.
No one did anything with it ever
Yeah.
again.
Well, both of those games were kind of takes on the platform genre for mobile. They're both really interesting. I think Spider is more of a game that might be short game material because it makes such good use of the sort of environmental storytelling that we're so fond of and things like that. And I definitely remember in that year, Spider was my game. But in the intervening years, have I played more arachnoid platformers on my iOS device, or have I played more Cannibal clones? And the answer would be by 1,000 to 1 Cannibal clones, endless runners. I did want to kind of toss it back a little bit at that while we're talking about Cannibal to some of the earlier examples of this kind of gameplay. Cannibal really did crystallize the idea of one-touch play, constantly running forward, but it was inspired by games that came before it. In particular, in a article I think in the New Yorker, the creator of Cannibal called out the original Crash Bandicoot, which had a lot of kind of constant forward motion, runny, jumpy levels in its sort of platform style gameplay, and a lot of other games, like some things I'd never heard of called Moon Patrol, and also Ski Free, which came on every computer that I never owned in the 90s. So there were definitely some previous examples.
You played it at school.
Yeah, we sure did.
Yeah, Ski Free and Spider Solitaire. Now, while we're on the topic of spiders.
Yeah, Spider Solitaire, the endless time waster.
He also mentioned in that article some of the levels in Aladdin, the Genesis Aladdin game that kind of did that. And I played that recently. There's some magic carpet levels that do kind of feel like an endless runner. You're moving to avoid obstacles. The carpet's going to keep going no matter what. And it really does have that same sort of feel. And even you can take that back to like the NES with the infamous level of Battletoads where you're on is it like a bike, like a hover bike?
Yes.
I never really played that.
I played a lot of
Fortunately.
that game, and that was the worst.
So it's not a totally new idea, but usually it was a small part of a larger game like Aladdin, or it was part of a very simple game. We also didn't mention Pitfall, which isn't an endless runner, but you can kind of see the seed of endless runners, even in games for the Atari and earlier like Pitfall. And in fact, Pitfall's been turned into an endless runner on iOS. There's a new version of Pitfall that essentially is a Cannibal clone.
It has an exclamation point at the end, which is how you know.
It makes sense to me because Pitfall was the genesis of the platform game, and it was a very, very simple platform game. And what is a endless runner today but a platform game stripped down? So it's great to have that kind of circle back around.
I was actually kind of disappointed by that, though. I downloaded Pitfall hoping to play like maybe a modern platformer, just Pitfall themed.
Pitbull themed.
Pitbull. Oh God! Please not Pitbull. See it Pitfall themed, and for it to be an endless runner, I was a little surprised. There was also a NASCAR game that someone at work showed me. I showed them Alto, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I downloaded this sweet racing game," and it was like an endless runner racing game where you're just on a forever track.
Yeah, and that's something that we'll probably talk about as we talk about some of the highlights of this genre, is that there's also a ton of crap in this genre. I think a lot of people people who take games seriously often don't take this genre seriously because it's just been such a den of shovelware. I mean, there's so many games where somebody has a license to NASCAR, like you said, Nate, or they've just figured out how to use Unity or whatever. They have no original ideas and they don't have the skills to pull something really good off, but they think, well, I can make an endless runner. And they can, but it's not going to do anybody any favors, There's a ton of really, really bad endless runners, but that doesn't mean that all endless runners are bad. Some of them are amazing.
And I think that's like, to pull it back to Alto for a minute, like this is the first one that I've played that it felt like more care was put into the aesthetic of the game and the atmosphere of the game than maybe the actual gameplay. The gameplay is great, but it's nothing new. There's plenty of games that involve backflips for speed and just going fast and things like that. But what set it apart to me from all the other ones is the other elements, how great it looks and how good it sounds and how good it felt to play.
I mean, the only other game in this genre that I feel comes close to having that crafted feel is Tiny Wings, which is another left to right style game. Tiny Wings was a one-handed game where you played a fat bird that you played a fat bird who was too fat to fly.
Sounds like a blues term, like, hey, Jonesy, play a fat bird.
Well, the fat bird subgenre of mobile games is really dominant.
Obese bird with tiny wings, and the poor little dude has to use hills to fly, and so you actually don't jump with the mechanic of the one button. You pull your wings into your body, and then to try to let gravity pull you tighter to the ground so you can then go up. Alto is very different, where it is a more, if you don't touch anything, you're going to just continue skiing or snowboarding, snowboarding down a mountain. And you use the control to jump, to avoid obstacles and to do tricks. The mechanics are often very similar, do a little bit of a different thing. But the two of them share the crafted art style. Tiny Wings is paper and watercolors, and it's wonderful.
Wings is the first one of these games that I ever got completely seriously addicted to. And it's because it has a couple of really smart design decisions. I'm not sure if these were things that Tiny Wings actually invented, but Tiny Wings came out in 2011, and that was right at the start of a really big explosion of these types of games. It seems like Cannonball came out in 2009, and then there was sort of a little bit of rumblings, and then in 2011 or so, there was an explosion of this style of gameplay. And Tiny Wings was the one that really stood out. The big thing that just made it extremely fun was, well, actually, two things. There are two things about it that I absolutely love. Three. No, there's two things that I really love about this game.
5, sir.
3. There's the first. Good God.
So Raygan, what did you like about Tiny Wings?
There's the ducking, the diving mechanic, which I think has a lot in common with the cape in Mario. It has this sort of swooping to build up speed and momentum, and managing your forward momentum in combination with your up and down swoops that was just absolutely addictive. It worked in Mario, and it worked here. And it was a little different. Obviously, you're kind of bottoming out in these curved valleys to rocket yourself forward, but it just had this incredible feel to the core mechanic. It wasn't just jump over obstacles or duck under logs or whatever. It was an actual, little physics puzzle in every single angle that you had to pick to dive. And it was perfect, wonderful.
And there was a total skill gain. You got better at it, noticeably better. Not just some of the other ones you get better because you begin to pick up on the way it changes, and you flick it left at the right time. This one, being able to drop your your fat bird into a tiny crevice at the at the right angle. It was hard because it's very different every time. Very rarely are you going at the exact same speed at the exact same hill. It's like learning the mechanic of it overall and applying it to different little hills was tricky and incredibly satisfying.
I returned to this after a hiatus. He actually released what he said was going to be Tiny Wings 2, and he actually just did a major free update to the game itself, which was really cool. Lots of little one-off challenges you could, in addition to the base game. You could do races against other birds and different kind of island visiting.
Oh yeah, I played that. That was great.
I tried to visit the core game again, and I have the highest score in this game among the short game. I have a ludicrously high score. I can't touch it because I suck at it after taking time off.
This is one of the only games that I've had. I don't know how to explain it properly, but I have a physical reaction to playing this game. And it's something that when I hit a slope just perfectly, I almost I twitch a little bit, and I don't know what it is. This is really strange to even talk about because as I'm playing it, I jerk a little bit as I'm playing it, and I cannot explain why.
Wait. So I'm sorry. Laura just pasted her score into the chat. And Laura, sorry, read that off for me again there?
My score is 184,668.
What are you
pretty good.
doing? Oh my God. Okay, sorry.
Why do you do anything else?
Yeah, it's a good 40,000 points higher than everyone else.
Why aren't you just a pro at this?
Why
don't
Someone should pay you something for that.
Yeah.
I feel like I owe you money now.
$184,000.
Sure. Put me on the books.
Anyway, I'm not going to get near that again.
The other thing that I really loved about this game, and I've seen this again and again since, but I think the first time I ever saw this mechanic was in Tiny Wings, was that it actually does have some progression and leveling up, and it does that with a really clever system. Obviously, every time you play the game, you're trying to get farther, get more points. But each time you play, there's also a set of 3 challenges. And those challenges are things that don't necessarily require you to play an amazing run. They're just a certain thing. In Tiny Wings, it would be things like touch the clouds 3 times. And that would be something that you could try for while you were playing the game as a sort of an additional challenge on what you were already doing. And the more of those challenges you completed, the better you would you'd get certain advantages in the game, like you'd level up your nest and things like that. In Tiny Wings, what that meant was getting larger multipliers on your score. So the more of those challenges you completed, the better your overall scores would be, because you would be able to, you'd get a larger multiplier. And a lot of other games have imitated this mechanic since, and Alto does it almost in exactly the same way. Alto has these sets of 3 challenges. You can complete those 3 in any order. If you complete all 3, not necessarily in the same run, just complete all 3 whenever you get to it, then you get some sort of benefit. In Alto, there's no score multiplier benefit, but eventually you unlock new characters, and those are really cool.
That challenge list mechanic is something that I've noticed in games outside of this genre as well, and just in our list here now, running right down from the top, like Tiny Wings, Time Surfer, Jetpack Joyride, Alto's Adventure, possibly others, Race to the Sun, Temple Run.
Don't Run with a Plasma Sword.
All of them now have that mechanic, which I think originated with Tiny Wings.
Yeah, I do think, though, you can draw some comparison to the kind of modern roguelike. I don't know what came first, but in other games where when you die, you're done, just like in these, let's say, Rogue Legacy, or what's some of the other ones we've been doing? Like we've been playing Wayward's.
Yeah, I didn't
That's
make
a
that
good
Soul.
comparison, yeah. Because, or in FTL, you unlock different ships or things like that.
You unlock different ships. It's the game you're playing is the same game, but through repeated playing and investing in your account or your character or whatever, when you re-enter the game, you're a little bit faster. You're a little bit better. Your sword strikes at a little bit higher damage. Crypt of the Necrodancer, that's a game we've covered. That happens. You unlock new things that appear in the dungeons. Like,
I know it has to exist outside because of, I know, that swear word gamification has been around since before Cannablat, before Tiny Wings, and challenges is such a huge part of that, then I know it's got to be a predecessor.
Yeah, it's like someone gamified my game.
I know, how dare they?
Oh, you know what this educational software really needs? A double jump. How do we double jump it?
So we've got a lot of other games on our list here. And I guess we can kind of attack these in terms of just, initially we were going to talk about these chronologically, but they all happen so
We should do a
quickly.
favorites draft on these.
Okay, I guess, sure. I call Tiny Wings.
No.
All right.
I also call Tiny Wings.
All right.
This is already a failure. Sorry, back to work.
And Alto, and then we're done. Everyone go home. Well, so we could kind of group these. Grouping them by year doesn't make a lot of sense because they all came out in such a glut all at once. So let's talk about them by perspective, by like the view that you are in when you're playing the game.
So the first and the biggest category is left to right, which is the horizontal scrollers. Tiny Wings is one, Alto is one, Jetpack Joyride, which is a really popular one. I played a lot of, but I know other people didn't, maybe.
I played a fair amount of it. It was pretty decent, but it didn't have the staying power that a lot of these other games did for me, for some reason. I don't really know why.
It's fun. It's got a good sense of humor, and it's got some interesting power-ups.
Yeah, the power-ups, it's silly. The challenges are really funny.
I'd actually give Jetpack Joyride credit for one thing that I thought it did amazingly well, that very few games do, and that is they started it as a premium, paid game, and transitioned it to free to play without making it suck. Like, very few games are able to do that, and I respected that game for it, even if it's not one of my favorites.
Absolutely. There's a game I want to call out in this sort of this left to right while we're breaking it up this way, and that is a game that I've not played, but only because the reviews were very iffy. I want to call it out because it's a Sonic game, Sonic Dash from 2013, which makes it a very late in the game comer to this genre. And I just want to question, why is this genre not chock full of Sonic the Hedgehog? Why the Sonic the Hedgehog Sonic Dash is like a spin-off of a console Sonic game. It's like a tie-in mobile game that's full of in-app purchases, is the reputation that I saw. Why has Sega not made a high-speed endless runner for Sonic? Maybe break it up with some Robotnik fights every so often? The
two best Sonic games. Well, there's Sonic CD, and I can't remember the name of the other one, but those two were both ports done by a third-party developer who was a fan who then sold the ports, or rather Sega bought the ports and put them out. So the only good Sonic games on the iPad were originally by a single developer who loved the genre so much he ported it. Unfortunately, when Sega's left their own devices, they suck at porting Sonic games or creating their own IP on mobile.
That's a really good point. I was stunned how good the Sonic 2 port for iOS was.
Same guy.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was incredibly well done. And it adapted itself to the touch controls really smartly. It wasn't just putting a virtual D-pad on screen. It just did a really good job of taking this classic game, keeping it as its own thing, and yet making it touch compatible. And it's so obvious, even if you're able to take that and put it onto mobile, why can't there be a decent Sonic? Yeah, why couldn't there be a decent Sonic game is a topic for another show, because good Lord, there hasn't been a decent Sonic game since I was a child. And I think we all just need to take that, and mourn it and let it go and move on. But good point, Shane.
We've got Freedom Planet. What more do we need?
You're right. Moving on. So we were talking about the different kinds of endless runners. One that up until recently I thought was completely unique was Temple Run, which I think is now still maybe one of the most popular. It was early in the pack. It was 2011. It had some things that were very unique at the time. It had 3D graphics. It had a third-person perspective that was completely unique at the time.
Sort of over the shoulder.
Yeah, you were running forwards, not left to right.
Crash Bandicoot.
Bandicoot style.
Exactly. You saw the back of the person as you ran
And
forward.
it also had power-ups that you would upgrade over time, which I think at the time might have been something I hadn't seen, but I won't stand by that. But that became the most popular, and it's also, to me, the start of some really bad endless runners, because it really doubled down on the in-app purchases, which I think is one of the main things that has really ruined this genre for me and for a lot of people.
Yeah. I played a ton of Temple Run.
Temple Run Brave, which is the reskin of it that's set, in the world of Brave. There's bears, there's beautiful Scottish glens.
Mm-hmm. I've played the arcade version. Did you know there's an arcade version of Temple Run?
No. Like with quarters and everything.
No, but that makes sense.
Yeah, with quarters and everything. Kids going into a Dave & Buster's these days have never heard of Donkey Kong or Miss Pac-Man or even Skee-Ball. What do you mean? You have to use your hands like a baby? But they've played Temple Run.
Air hockey.
And they'll pay quarters to pay Temple Run on a big screen.
Yeah. Well, the fun thing about Temple Run is it actually brings in some of those extra controls. A left to right perspective one we didn't mention is Don't Run with the Plasma Sword, which has a lot of fight controls that add on besides the jump. Temple Run also has swipe tilt controls, kind of adds a little bit more to the one button. As you progress further and further, you need to have more combinations of this. Not every endless runner is one button. Just a lot of them are.
Temple Run did it very, very cleanly. It was a very natural progression, I thought.
It sure did. It combined the swipes for, dodging left, turning left and right, with a tilt control for kind of angling a little bit and dodging items. And also you could jump with the swipe. It had good, tight touch controls, which is very important for this kind of a game.
Yeah, and for a game that had such mass market appeal and just was, it was everywhere for a while. It's actually, there's a lot going on. It's a pretty difficult game to have been such a mass market success.
I think it's the most popular game by far that uses the accelerometer as its primary control.
I think there's a bit of an elephant in the room here, and that's that we're not talking about a much maligned example of this genre, and that's Flappy Bird. Flappy Bird came onto the scene really suddenly and became this enormous overnight App Store success on the iPhone.
Inexplicably.
And, there was an enormous backlash against it as well.
It didn't make any sense to me at the time. Why are people downloading this game?
It still doesn't make any sense.
Well,
it's just a thing that happened.
It is a thing that happened. I have some theories about it.
It was the meme of the App Store.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a meme.
Yeah.
The thing that it did really, really well was it made a game that was extremely hard, and so high scores really meant something because the game is absurdly hard to the point where somebody who you hand it to them, they think they're going to be able to do okay because it seems very basic and simple, and suddenly they can get a high score of 2. Like, it's absurdly hard. And then the other thing that it did very well was it made that score very easy to share with people. Like, it was very easy to tell your friends what your high score was in Flappy Bird. And also, it was free and didn't have any in-app purchases. So all of those things taken together meant that it was a game that was able to spread virally very quickly because people enjoyed sharing their score. It was actually almost a kind of a weird joke to tell somebody, hey, here's my Flappy Bird high score, because basically everybody's Flappy Bird high score was in the single digits. And then when somebody did get a high score in Flappy Bird, people were still very impressed. I don't like the game, but I actually respect it, I think, more than a lot of people give it credit.
All right, everybody, it's inevitable now. What's your Flappy Bird high score?
Oh, I don't have it on my phone anymore, I'm afraid. I don't know what it was.
I've never played it.
What, really?
What?
Yeah.
I intentionally never downloaded it.
It's
and then he pulled
free.
it from the store.
That's
he pulled
true.
It.
That was the other big story
Yeah,
about
but then
that
it came
game.
back, yeah.
He pulled it from the store, which made it this enormous, but everyone knew it was being pulled from the store for like a week and a half beforehand. And so it spread like absolute wildfire during that time. It was a really strange thing.
He was making $50,000 a day off of ads, and he was getting a lot of hate mail from people saying that their kids were addicted to it. Like, he's a terrible person for making a game like this.
So
Why would
normal
you make
feedback on
and-
a game.
Well, yeah, it's normal internet troll stuff, and he was making a ton of money, but it actually got to the guy. And some people think that that's like the whole thing was a marketing ploy, and maybe that's the case. But if you take what he said, like for what he said, he actually felt bad for giving the world Flappy Bird, even though he was making a lot of money off of it.
So now that we've talked about a game that none of us loved, can we talk about a game that I know Shane and I have played a ton
yes, we
of?
can.
Race the Sun. I got it on Steam in a Humble Bundle. It's not an easy game. It's got that light is death timer. You go in that third-person perspective, just like Temple Run, and you are flying forward. The game constantly makes fun of you. It's so awesome.
I would say it has a lot in common with Tiny Wings, because Tiny Wings had this sort of, you've got a limited amount of time to play, as symbolized by the sun setting in front of you, and you've got that also in Race the Sun. It's got that moving forward perspective, so it feels sort of like a racing game. But the
You're
biggest
flying.
thing. Yes, you're flying, but you're really low to the ground. And unless you collect power-ups, you can't get any height at all. But the biggest thing about this game that makes it unique, that it has somewhat in common with Tiny Wings, is that when you're loading up the game, you and everybody else playing it that day for that 24 hours is getting the same generated world every time you play that day. Tiny Wings had sort of the same thing. You had the same kind of progression of islands every day.
You
but
actually, every day did get a slightly different look, and the islands were similar that day. So it's actually the same thing.
The thing about Race the Sun with these pre-generated courses that you're getting every day is that it's also telling you what your world rank is. And for me, that was super fun because you get to practice these sort of opening moves. Okay, so I've got the first kind of zone. And now, after playing the game, say 15 times today, I've got one route through that first zone that I could get it perfect. And when I pull it off, it feels great. And then I get to the second zone, and I can sometimes pull off a perfect run there. And I get to the third zone, and things start to really go wrong. And then, you run through that a few times, you get this perfect run, and you see, gosh, I'm in the top 50 in the world right now. And I know that there's, when I started, I was in the bottom like 400.
So it gives you this great sense of achievement. It's got really great kind of twitchy, fast gameplay. You really feel the speed. What do you love about it, Laura?
Well, there's two things I love. First, I was sold on this game by the trailer. The trailer, like Super Meat Boy, is just a reaction of people dying. How mad people are when they die in this game. I'm a sucker for those games that you will lose it at the drop of a hat. But the thing that I think is most appealing and most unique about Raise the Sun is that when you start the game, you're actually on a very open field heading towards a bunch of different obstacles. And you have the choice to go straight or to pivot right and left. So you can actually be playing the same exact course, but routing your way through a completely different way. It's more open than any other endless runner because you have that ability to not only move forward, but really move right and left. And a lot of the games that you play have a more set path. There's guardrails on the side of the screen. If you run off screen, you will hit a cliff, run off a bridge, or it's not an option like in Alto or any of the forward runners.
Definitely. Like all of those games, and Tiny Wings included, Alto included, are really endless in a sort of a two-dimensional way. And this game is very three-dimensional. You're really part of the game is finding that perfect route. And when you've found a really good route through, area 1, area 2, area 3, you're still dying sometimes in area 1, sometimes in area 2, exploring, making mistakes. It adds this whole exploration element to the game that I feel like really enhances the whole endless runner feel.
Yeah, most you can just move right, left, up.
I think this game is kind of interesting in that it's a console version of this genre that really began on mobile. And there's only just a few others that I can think of that have made it to PCs and consoles. The only one that I've put a serious amount of time into is Bit Trip Runner and its sequel, Bit Trip Runner 2, which are super, super charming. They do have levels that have ends, so technically not exactly an endless runner as we've been discussing, but it basically plays like one. But it also combines that with a kind of a rhythm game. It has beautiful music, and a lot of the moves that you have to make are done in time with the music.
Anamanaguchi. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Is it really?
It is Anamanaguchi. I thought about putting that into the game music podcast. But
Wow, I didn't know. That's awesome. The music is fantastic in both of those games. I totally recommend Bit Trip Runner 2. I know it's available on Steam, and I don't know. I think it's available on the previous gen consoles like the PS3 and Xbox 360, although I might be wrong about that.
So real quick before we go back to Alto, I want to give a quick shout out to some of the many quality endless runners out there in the App Store. I do play a lot of mobile games, probably more than our other hosts. So some of these are free, and I'll call those out. In that left to right runner category, Don't Run with a Plasma Sword and Banana Kong are great. Banana Kong is super fun to give to a child because it's a hulking gorilla who's running through. There's things like jumping over gaps. You can kind of punch through walls. It's really charming. Don't Run with a Plasma Sword has a lot of combat in it. It has a lot more platformer elements than you're used to. Also, like Temple Run in that third-person perspective, Boson X, so hard. If you've played Super Hexagon...
yes, I have.
You can... Yes, so it's a blend of Super Hexagon and Endless Runner.
Oh.
Yeah, you run through this tunnel, and you can rotate the world to move. They stripped out coins, power-ups, costumes. Your entire goal is to explore enough of this tunnel to unlock a quirk or something. It's science-based.
That sounds really cool, though. I want to give that a try.
It's super cool. It's so hard. I'm so bad at it, but it's unique. And there's also a top-down one that's super charming and free called Off the Leash, where you play dogs breaking out of the pound. And as you're playing, you collect more dogs and you get a pack. And there's a power up where you get double dogs and your size of your pack explodes. And suddenly you have like 40 dogs on screen. Unfortunately, the dogs get picked off when you run into things. If the dogs hit something, they'll just bark and fly away.
That went from really happy to really sad.
But there's actually parts where you like all the dogs get on surfboards and ride across pools.
Oh, I just looked this up. Oh my gosh, the dogs
now
are
it's happy
surfing
again.
and they're being attacked by sharks. These are
the
so
dogs
cute.
are getting attacked by sharks.
Oh, this game looks adorable.
This game is adorable. It's totally free. The only I did take the in-app purchase, which lets you just double coins because I wanted to throw them money because I liked it so much.
That game looks
Off the Leash
great.
is adorable.
I'll definitely have a link to that in the show notes, and I'm downloading it on my iPhone right this minute. It looks really cute.
It's so cute.
Speaking of really cute, another game that I love that takes some of the elements of this Endless Runner genre and blends them with other things to create something interesting is Crossy Road. Everybody was playing Crossy Road for a little while there, so I think you probably have already heard of it. But it's a mobile game based on Frogger, but with a nice isometric perspective and a really interesting sort of low poly art style. Looks really cool. Done. It's an amazing job using the Unity engine, I think. And it just plays like Frogger, but it goes on forever. So it's a Frogger score attack. There's no end to the level.
Yeah.
You just play until you get to wherever you get hit by a car. It's great.
Yeah. I'd call that endless, but not a runner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crossy Road is another game that falls within the genre of I'm really only still playing this game because I want to beat Raygan's high score, which is a specific genre for me and one that I'm usually not very successful at, but it keeps me going.
The game that brought us all to talking about this genre and how much we love it was Alto's Adventure. And actually, it's kind of weird how we got into this. We had initially been planning on talking about a different iOS game this week, and we're still planning on covering it. But Alto's Adventure hit right as we were beginning playing it, and I know, at least for my sake, I couldn't stop playing Alto's Adventure long enough to finish the other game that we were going to discuss this week. I just became obscenely addicted to it, and I think a lot of you guys had the same experience.
I downloaded this game at exactly the same time that I downloaded the game we were planning to review, Space Age.
Which we're still totally intending to cover because it looks really cool. But
it looks great.
I haven't played enough of it yet.
I have beat your score, I don't know that I'll be able to do anything but play Alto's Adventure. I mean, you know, I've got a life, and that life is trying to beat your Alto's Adventure score. Alto's Adventure, for me, it scratched the itch of a good Endless Runner. It doesn't surprise me with any of the things that it does. It's not a game that reinvents the Endless Runner genre. Like a lot of the games that are on our list have, I would say it's like the Endless Runner with a cool tweak. Like the Endless Runner up to this point that was my favorite, other than Race the Sun, was Time Surfer, which would be basically Cannibal plus Braid time powers, or Tiny Wings, which is Cannibal plus
swooping.
swoopiness. Yeah, swooping. And this game is pretty much just a pretty spot on Endless Runner with skiing instead of running.
Snowboarding. And actually that's the big criticism that it's faced, is that it is in many ways gameplay wise almost identical to a previous game called Ski Safari. And I never played Ski Safari, but I know it's really popular. Nate, I think you played it, right?
Yeah, I played a fair amount of Ski Safari. I really enjoyed the game. And that's what I was saying, like, Alto is Ski Safari, less wacky, more Monument Valley. And I think it's enough to make it, like, it's mechanically very similar, though I do think Ski Safari at times felt faster. It's a little more zoomed in. There are times in Alto where you've got it's really pulled back and you've got a great view, pretty big, large amount of distance in front of you, behind you, and kind of around you, whereas Ski Safari is pretty close most of the time. But I felt that Alto they obviously cared about different things than Ski Safari cared about. And it's that atmosphere and the sound and the tone of the game. And I thought it was strong enough that I didn't care that it really was the same mechanic, which is hold down the jump to do a backflip.
I think you're right. It really brings the visuals of Monument Valley. Not quite, but it has that same level of care applied to it. And it's the same sort of oddly zen aesthetic and feel to it that just, it feels different. It's the Endless Runner. It's Ski Safari for folks who didn't like the goofiness of Ski Safari and liked the sort of pure art style of Monument Valley.
And the little big details are on point here. I mean, part of this game is that your llamas have escaped, and that's why you've decided to snowboard down the mountain to get your llamas back. One of my favorite all-time animations in iOS has got to be the llamas going down a really steep ski slope on their butts, and like as they scoot down the mountain so beautifully.
That is adorable.
It's adorable, and
and their floppy ears as they run,
and they flop, and it's a very lovely side animation to distract you from the rocks you're going to run into any second now.
Yeah, it really is gorgeous. If you can play this on an iPad, particularly a Retina iPad, I 100% recommend doing that. I played it on my iPhone as well, but the iPad is really where to play this game if you can. Gorgeous graphics.
Okay, and if you are going to play this game, here's the thing. All you're going to want to do is do backflips. And I understand that. All that I ever want to do in real life is backflips. But here's the thing. You cannot do nearly as many backflips as you're going to want to do. So chill out on the backflips and your runs will be so much more successful. That's
until
my
you
advice.
get the character of Maya, who's really great at backflips.
Yeah, and also look out for that rock because like I want to say like 80 to 90% of my deaths are from either going for a backflip when I definitely shouldn't have been doing a backflip or hitting a rock. And that's it. Like I very rarely die by anything else. So
Occasionally I miss chasms.
That's some good life advice from Nate Heininger.
yep. Yeah, well I try to abide by those rules in real life. I can't do as many backflips as I think I can, and look out for that rock.
So one of the things that's getting the most praise in this game is the fact that it has weather. You can see both time of day. You can go through sunrise, sunset, nighttime, and there's weather. There's storms, snowfalls, and they do make the game a lot harder. Something that, as someone with a very active mobile day for work, I often have about 20% battery on my way home, and I try to lower the contrast of my screen as much as humanly possible. Not possible if you're trying to do a night game. You're just going to see, hit rocks because you can't see them. My other minor peeve is you can't play a podcast in the background, which I like doing a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And there's only one track. So if you're playing this over and over again, you can't really zone out and listen to something else and play the game. Other than that, those are really, they make a big difference to me. But other than that, the game's really wonderful.
Yeah, I totally
Yeah,
agree.
I wish there was like a day-night slider for difficulty.
Yeah, sometimes the nights are particularly early in the game when you're not quite, a backflip machine like I have become. It's really difficult.
We get it.
It's really difficult to avoid rocks at night because it's dark. You can't see them. But you get better.
much like real snowboarding. I think it's a good life lesson for the kids.
But for what it's worth, the game is arguably prettier at night, or like dusk and dawn, and the changing of the times. It's very nice, and so I like. Part of me is
big part
glad
of the
that
visual appeal.
Yeah, part of me is glad that you're forced into it because knowing me, darkness is a little bit harder. I just want to get a high score. I would probably just put on the day and probably just end up doing that most of the time, when in reality, nighttime is also an experience of the game. And the
Some
weather.
of my best runs started off at night, and then it dawns, and now once I've gotten like a little farther into the game and things, it's I think it's easier to do once you've gotten a little faster. You're really going to want that daylight. So
And you get a boost. You get a point boost too
That's
for
true.
surviving the night.
Oh, really? If you're going to have a good run, it's going to change. Like, you're going to make it from at least night to day or day to night. Like, it's the day-night cycle is not very, very long. So the runs that I've had that have been in the 40+ thousand points have usually gone from one into the other, and I've played a little bit of both. So it's kind of impossible to avoid it entirely. A little bit on the sound design too. Like, the weather sounds really good. There was a moment when I was playing this game with it plugged into my car speakers, and it was thundering in the game, and it sounded really nice over my car speakers. And I don't even really have good car speakers, and no, I was not playing this game while driving.
I was about to ask.
No, it was on a break from work after lunch, and I wanted to try it on good speakers.
Yeah,
so
the sound is great. I think this is something that a lot of mobile games have to put a lot of effort into. If you're going to play a mobile game that has sound, odds are it's going to play a pretty short playlist, 1 or 2 songs in the background as you play. This game has 1 song that it plays. So it has to be both nice, something that basically anyone will enjoy listening to and help them focus on the gameplay, and also just hold up over a long period of time to many, many, many plays of the song. And this one does a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think so.
sound is very, very important to me in video games, just like it is in movies and things like that. Sound is the one thing in a video game that can be absolutely true to life. You can not make a game that looks precisely like the real world, but you can make a game sound exactly indistinguishable from the real world. And so it really is something that I pay a lot of attention to. This game has beautiful sounds, from like the sound of your grinding to
Phrasing.
Yep.
Thanks.
To the crash landings, etc.
Yeah, it's got great sound. So any final advice for people who are playing this game or others?
Why don't you say it, high score leader?
Oh yeah.
You gotta share your secrets.
Do the triple backflip.
So we
Just
can
do
beat
it.
you.
You can do it. Don't, don't screw around. Just do the backflip.
Right
The
over
game
the gate.
requires it.
Take the risk.
Occasionally.
Do the backflip. You can do it.
Also, don't do as many backflips. Yeah.
So the opposite of Nate's.
Oh, the scarf. The scarf. We haven't talked about the scarf. And
We
its
briefly
importance.
touched on it, but yeah, it's great. The scarf gets longer the faster you go.
Yeah. So the more combos you land, the longer your scarf gets, and it gives you a speed boost. And the speed boost is really necessary at times. You're going to piss off a guy who's sitting by the fire chilling, an elder, and that guy will chase you and hit you if you don't go fast enough.
He's a real dick.
Yeah, he's
Maybe my favorite thing in the game, actually. Like, there's a lot of obstacles in this game and a lot of things to grind on, but phrasing. But the elders are really a great addition because it adds a chase. It adds something to pursue you. It's not all the time. You're not always being pursued, but sometimes you'd want to take the time to get those crazy combos and, try inventive things with the obstacles. And sometimes you've just got to go fast to get away from the elder. And I think it varies things up in a way that I really enjoy.
Yeah, I think it's the hardest of the obstacles too. It's the rarest,
Definitely.
I think, because of that, but it's also the hardest. It's because you're still dealing with the other things. So now you're avoiding rocks, but you're also trying to do as many backflips as possible to get your speed up enough as possible to get away from the asshole riding like a reindeer or something. I'm not sure what he's riding, but
Probably a
maybe it's
llama.
another llama. Yeah, it might be a llama.
This game's all about the llamas.
Yeah, which is the only one little wacky touch in a game that's not really wacky.
Well, I think it's on theme. It's clearly like a Himalayan theme thing. You get their garb is all like colorful Himalayas and all the bunting. We get just makes me want
That's
to
true.
go to the Himalayas.
Makes me want to be a llama farmer.
I thought it was Peru. Is there skiing
Really?
in Peru? I don't know.
I have no idea.
I think you.
Alto does sound more like a Peru type name because it means high.
Yep.
I'm feeling.
I
little
assumed it was
Alto
South
after
America.
this. Well, wherever it is, they got llamas.
They got llamas.
Alto's
in South
adventure
America.
is an endless snowboarding odyssey set against a beautiful and ever-changing alpine landscape.
Alpine.
Yeah.
Alpine just means mountains.
That's
Yeah,
true.
that doesn't mean anything
I was
specifically.
trying to read this to see if it said anything about the specifics.
Where
of
are the
location.
Alpines?
The game features blah blah blah, fluid, etc., trick combos. As players progress through 180 handcrafted goals, they'll rescue runaway llamas, grind along village rooftops, leap over terrifying chasms, and outwit the mountain elders. Yeah, it doesn't really say where it's meant
I
to be
just
taking
assumed
place.
South America because of the outfits.
Yeah, the outfits do have. I don't know. They seem like it's hard to place it. That's as good a guess as any.
It's
though.
probably. I think you're probably more.
Peru
on the
seems
idea
likely
than I
because
am.
of the
Yeah.
llamas. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Some hard evidence right there, guys.
We're gonna put this in the follow up next episode.
Sure.
I'm gonna Wikipedia llamas and get back to you guys.
Yeah, let's look up the most likely place that has llamas, like on a llama per human capital
Yeah.
percentage, and then we'll at least have it narrowed down.
Where do people farm llamas on top of the world's highest mountain?
On iOS.
Where can people play this game in the Alpine Himalayas?
Yes. So this game was developed by Snowman, which is a small iOS developer, development house. Ryan and Jordan, I see their first names on their website, but not their last. I'm sure you can find them if you look harder than I am. They've had a couple of other games, but nothing that I've had a chance to play, and nothing quite on this scale. But it's pretty lovingly crafted, and came out January 27th, 2015, and it's available now for just $2 on the App Store, which is an absurd deal. This game has 0 in-app purchases, which is a huge plus for games of this type, as far as I'm concerned.
Yay.
And you can tell that just a lot of love and care went into creating this game. So I 100% recommend it. I recommend playing it on your iPad. If not that, play it on your iPhone. It's got iCloud sync for the save game to make sure that your precious high score is saved in the cloud and synced between your devices. And get it, play it. It's great.
And real quick, shout out to Harry Nesbitt, who is the person who illustrated the game.
Oh yeah, the illustration of the game is phenomenal. And if you go to Harry Nesbitt's website, he's got a lot of really nice, sort of similarly styled stuff. He's clearly got a real eye.
Only one.
He's a Cyclops designer.
That's why he's really good at 2D art.
Sorry.
All right.
Ooh.
So, thanks for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. I have been one of your hosts. I'm Raygan Kelly. You can follow me on Twitter at RayganK. Laura, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Laura J. Nash.
And Shane, where can people find you?
You can follow me home from the bar. You can follow me at 8-Bit Shane.
And Nate.
You can follow me on Twitter at NateSTL.
And Nate, is your other podcast underway at the moment?
It's just starting. We've done an episode just the other day. Again, I see there's very little crossover probably between these two podcasts. But hey, if you are a fan of the St. Louis Cardinals and want to hear more of my voice, check out Talking About Birds.
All right. And of course, you can follow our show on Twitter at _shortgame, or you can visit our website, www.theshortgame.net, which is the best place to find all of the show notes, as well as all the ways that you can keep up with our show and leave us feedback. We love feedback, and we particularly love feedback left in the form of glowing iTunes reviews.
We had several people who actually left reviews citing Shane's meltdown as their primary reason to give a review.
Oh, thanks,
which
guys.
only encourages Shane to continue yelling at you. Do you learn nothing?
Well, that's the kind of lesson that we don't want our listeners to learn.
But we will let Shane thank them.
If Shane's tirade last time encouraged you to leave a review, keep up the good work. Shane, do you see any new reviews on the list that you want to call out?
I just want to send a personal thank you to Ninja Stalker.
Thank you, Ninja Stalker.
Listen, Ninja Stalker, you said some kind things about me, and yeah, your review was good enough. He said that he said you should do yourself a favor and check out our podcasts. So I agree with that. And then he asked at the end, was that good enough, Shane? And I say, yes, that was a 5-star review is good enough, Ninja Stalker.
Thank you, Ninja Stalker. Thank you. And thanks to all of our listeners. And join us again next week with another episode of The Short Game.